popular. But you can actually do a kibbutz fly drive. If somebody wants to rent a car, and you can actually purchase, like the fly drive tokens to go around and visit all the different kibbutzes. But you can still volunteer. It's just the fact that you can also do things. There's kibbutzes for art. There's kibbutzes for technology. All the different themes, but they're there. And they're still very much going. Very alive and kicking.
I'm not interested in going to work when I go somewhere, so where should I go?
But if you're young and you're a traveler, and that's when you find most people. I mean, I am amazed at the amount of people I come across that have worked at a kibbutz for a few, months when they were, like on their gap year. So, personally, me, if they could find me something where I was doing chilled out work, and especially during the winter, oh my goodness, I wouldn't mind. I'd wash dishes if I could spend time in the Israeli sun.
No, I've been bone idle from an early age, so that's not going to happen. But if I want to go to Israel to pamper and heal myself from the hard grind of working in travel, where should I go?
Well, the great thing about Israel is that if you want to do something like a spa holiday, you could go virtually anywhere. Most of the major hotels will have spas, and they are very, very good and very up on the treatment. However, you cannot beat, if somebody wants to go someplace and really seriously relax, the Dead Sea is one of the most magical, amazing places on the planet. You have to understand, and unfortunately this is a telephone interview because you can't see how white I am. I am naturally a very white, see-through person, which means that I can't go out in the sun without having lots of sunscreen on. Well, unless you go for a majority of the year to the Dead Sea, because the Dead Sea is about between 425 or 427 meters below sea level. And this does all sorts of really special things to the air. One, it filters out the harmful rays of the sun. Now, keep in mind that it was late November, early December when I was there the first time, but I actually sunbathed. Got all my vitamin D that I needed, but did not burn. It was amazing. I wouldn't put this to the test high summer, by the way.
Okay, I won't
but
do that.
For most of the year, I would say you can consider fall, winter, and spring. You can very easily sunbathe there with no sunscreen. You can take in all the good benefits, and you don't get sunburn. It's quite amazing. But all this extra layers of atmosphere also does a few other things. First of all, you've got the Dead Sea it's a lake that has no escape route. It is, so you get water from the Jordan River, but then there's no place for it to go. And that is what over the millennia has caused this to get, it is very, very salty. So, but all these different elements that are evaporating into the atmosphere, because it's so low, you've got extra oxygen, you've got no pollen in the air, and you've also got this certain elements, and one of the major elements called bromine, not bromide, bromine, and what this does, it relaxes your central nervous system. So right away, it maybe takes, I tested it because I've been twice, and I tested it the second time because I was on a quick visit, and if you sit and you do deep breathing, it really does chill you out. I wish I could have canisters of it at work to inhale when I needed to. But not only that, you've got the incredible spas there, but it's also the health benefits. First of all, going in the Dead Sea is something that is weird, but it's wonderful. If you start walking in, and the minute your buoyancy reaches a certain point, your legs pop up. And you have to basically swim back to a place where the buoyancy will equal out again, because you float, and it's the weirdest float you've ever felt, because you just feel like you're being held up, and it's amazing. But the water itself is so amazing. Don't shave before you go in the Dead Sea. That is the most important piece of information I can tell everybody, because if you've got an open cut, you don't want to go in because it will sting. But if you're without that, if you can stick a plaster on, when you go in there, you come out and you feel like you've been enveloped in baby oil. it is so good for your skin, and you come out feeling so soft. And the mud itself is very therapeutic because of all the minerals in the mud. That's the kind of thing where everybody goes there, you spread the mud on your body, and then you go for a float and let it soak off. The mud, because of all the minerals, is very good for your circulatory system. And because of all these different combinations, it's very good for health tourism. You have to understand, anybody with psoriasis or rheumatoid problems or any skin disorders, they can go there, and if they spend like 2 weeks, they can actually bring their conditions to a manageable level. It's so good, and you should, if you check on the internet, there's like before and after pictures of people who have been there. Absolutely amazing. So it is really one of nature's magical places.
Will the mud make my hair grow back? That's the important question.
Will the what?
The mud.
It will not. No, unfortunately, no.
No.
However, what you have to do is realize that there's a lot of women out there like me who think bald is amazing.
Yeah, if my hair grew back.
However, do you want to know what?
Mm-hmm.
It would not surprise me is if the cure for baldness came from a researcher in Israel.
You never know. I wouldn't know what to do if I had hair again. It's been so long
no,
since
I
I've
don't
had
want
it
hair.
Yeah.
Bald heads are gorgeous. Don't ever wear it proud, dear.
Okay, I will do. Thanks. Checking it out before you check in on the John Guinn Travel Show on ukhealthradio.com. We've touched on hotels, kibbutzes are hotels, but what's the accommodation like? Is there any large all-inclusive resorts? Can you have a bed and breakfast or anything like that? Airbnb, is that over there too?
Okay, everything. You have to understand how much Israel is geared up towards tourism. So finding places to stay is easy. The major cities, you have virtually everything you want, everything down from a B&B all the way up to really luxurious resorts. Finding all-inclusive, though, the complete all-inclusive, to find that with the drinks and everything, it's either the Dead Sea or down in Eilat. Eilat does service the all-inclusive market. Most of the other major areas, getting half board is quite easy. Full board you can do at certain places, but not. If you're thinking of all-inclusive, you're thinking of some place like you do Spain and the big resorts. That's only pretty much down in the Eilat, but there are a couple hotels in the Dead Sea that can do it as well. But everything let's start from the B&Bs. They're called Zimmers, okay? And the quality of Zimmers, if you just go, and I give you the website, the magic website is zimmer.co.il, and it is, you can hit the English button and everything will come up. You can see the most incredible range of just beautiful properties, but these are the small 1-2 rooms, things like that. Funny enough, the hostels in Israel, for if somebody's a little bit more adventurous, they're very good quality. In fact, there is a hostel in Jerusalem, which is called the Abraham Hostel, and it's just one. I think they've been placed the 5th best hostel in the world. And everybody stayed there. I mean, I had a lovely Scottish gentleman a few years ago that I helped that was on a very limited budget, and he wanted to go over there, sort of a pilgrimage, to find the grave of his grandfather who had died when he was fighting in Israel. And we found him the Abraham Hostel. And considering this was a man in, I think he was his late 60s, early 70s, he couldn't rave enough about it. And everybody that stayed there, I mean, it still is a hostel. You're not going to get 5-star luxury, but it is clean, it is wonderful, and people just say how wonderful the place is. But then you've got the mid-range hotels. So people who are more of a budget, you'll find that, and they're anything from large to small. But if you want to really splurge out and go for the luxury properties, my goodness, there are some gorgeous hotels all over the country. Great ratings, the whole bit. So you've got a wide range of everything available.
It's good to have the choice. Right. Luke.
Yeah, it is. Do you want to know what? That is half the problem.
Yeah. Luton Airport is just 10 minutes down the road. I've got 3 days. I'm going to get myself a flight. what should I see and do if I was to pop to Israel for 3 days?
Now, if you've got 3 days, I can recommend a lovely, interesting city break with a little bit of a difference, because now this is my personal point of view, and you have to keep in mind when I'm telling you, you can actually do opposite. Mm-hmm. Because I would base myself in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. I would have a day of just walking around Tel Aviv, because Tel Aviv is a walking city. I mean, I am out of shape. I don't get a lot of physical activity, but when my first visit there in less than 24 hours, I walked the length of the city. It is beautiful and wonderful. So I would do walking tour of Tel Aviv one day, mm-hmm. and there are free walking tours as well that you can take. I would do one day in Jerusalem. And because it's so quick, I mean, you can take a bus from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is less than an hour. So I would go over there and probably do a tour of the old city and then spend the third day back in Tel Aviv. Or you can do opposite. You can go to Jerusalem, spend 2 days touring there and 1 day touring in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. If you're in Jerusalem, cool. If you stay in Jerusalem, this is possible. You could do a day of touring in Jerusalem. You could go down to the Dead Sea, have a dip, do that whole thing, and then you could also spend a day in Tel Aviv. It's, first of all, you'll find what you like. Tel Aviv is more modern, and if you're into architecture, if you're into modern architecture, it's definitely a place you want to walk around because it's got the highest concentration of Bauhaus buildings. And you think about Miami Beach without the colors, because mm-hmm. everything, they painted all white, and it's quite beautiful. If you're also into history, Tel Aviv, you have to remember you have Jaffa, which is right there. Now, Jaffa is one of the oldest established ports on the Mediterranean. It is ancient alleyways walking down. And what's weird is that you've got Tel Aviv, which is a little over 100 years old, right next to Jaffa, and they're walking distance between each other. And Jaffa is all the old ancient, you walk around. It's all been redone. Basically, I think in the 70s, you could sell something in Jaffa for next to nothing, and the artists decided to move in. So the alleys and cobblestone around Jaffa, walking around, you've got, it's got a very Arab feel to it, but it's ancient, and you can visit the top of Jerusalem and the old churches, and it's quite amazing. And then you've got the new Tel Aviv. So you've got that kind of as a double whammy when you're in Tel Aviv. But if you're really into history and any sort of religious affiliations, because this is something that's really weird. Now, I will admit to you, I am a total agnostic where I just think, please believe what you like. I just don't believe the same thing. Mm-hmm. But the spirituality of Jerusalem when you're over there it's impossible just to ignore, because you're around so many people who have this unbelievably passionate connection to certain sites. The vibe in the air is really amazing. It is very spiritual. I don't know, did you manage to see the episode of The Simpsons where they visited Israel?
Yes, I did, yeah.
You did?
Yeah. So
Homer getting Jerusalem syndrome, it actually does happen, but probably not to the extent that good old Homer Simpson had it. But you get caught up in this vibe because the spirituality is just there. If it can make an old agnostic like me actually feel something special, you've got to understand it is really amazing. But
I'll be careful.
The great thing is, if you don't want Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, for goodness sakes, you can do a 3-day weekend. If you want to go up the coast, you can go up the coast to, say, you could visit Caesarea. You could go to Haifa and see the Baha'i Gardens and all the beautiful things that are in Haifa and Akko. I mean, it's endless what you can do in 3 days. The only one thing is I wouldn't go there if you just wanted to relax, because once you see what's out there to see, you will be constantly on the move.
You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on UKHealthRadio.com. My guest this week is Michelle Roberts from the Israeli Tourist Board in London. We are talking about Israel, which you probably would have guessed already if you joined the show part way through. I did 2 interviews with Michelle, as I mentioned at the beginning, one in Israel in general and another one more specifically on Jaffa. We're coming to